Hello everyone, welcome you all in the another video tutorial. So in this video lecture, we will discuss about a kingdom called as fungus or fungi. So in this video we will discuss about what are fungi. So let's start with the introductive part. So before moving to the kingdom fungi, let's understand about the 5 kingdom classification to clear our basic concept. So basically, a scientist named as R.H. Whitaker classified the kingdom into 5 kingdoms in 1969, and this classification was based upon some characters like mode of nutrition, organization of structure, cell structure of these organisms, and their reproduction methods. So in these criteria, all the organisms are divided into 5 kingdoms. And these major kingdoms include Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae, and Animalia. So from these kingdoms, the Monera include all the prokaryotic organisms, the Protista include unicellular and eukaryotic organisms, and Fungi include some heterotrophic, eukaryotic or unicellular and some multicellular organisms. Plantae include all the plants, and Animalia include all the animals in its kingdom. So this is the 5 kingdom classification, and in this video we will discuss about the kingdom fungi in detail. What are the fungi, what is the structure of fungus, and what is the mode of nutrition and mode of reproduction of the fungus. So let's start with the introductive part about fungi, and there are some characteristic features. As we have discussed that fungi is a kingdom and it usually consists some multicellular eukaryotic organisms, but it also consists some unicellular organisms also. So basically fungi include microorganisms like yeast, molds and mushrooms, from which several organisms are microscopic organisms that cannot be seen by naked eyes, but there are several organisms like mushrooms which can be seen by naked eyes and essential for the food industry, which are edible in nature. So the most distinguishable feature of the fungus include that they are heterotrophic organisms, and that's why they are divided and differentiated into a different kingdom, because they have some different abilities or different characteristic features from the plants, and these features include that they are heterotrophic in nature because they lack chlorophyll. That's why they cannot perform photosynthesis. So that's why the mode of nutrition of fungi is heterotrophic in nature, and they are saprophytic or sometimes as parasitic in nature. That plays an important role in the nutrient cycle in the ecosystem. However, some species of fungi are also responsible for some disease. They are parasitic in nature and they cause several infections in plants as well as in some animals also. The study of fungi is known as mycology. So now let's understand about some characteristic features of the fungi. So they are non-vascular and non-motile organisms, which means that they do not have vascular elements in its structure. They lack xylem and phloem that are combinedly known as vascular elements. And fungi also lack chlorophyll in its structure. That's why they are differentiated from plants, because they cannot perform photosynthesis, and that's why the mode of nutrition for the fungus is heterotrophic. So they store their food in the form of starch, and it is also called as fungal starch. Now the mode of reproduction, it can be sexual or asexual in the fungus, and they can also reproduce by some vegetative methods also. The fungus consists the outermost layer of the cell as cell walls as in the plants, but the cell wall of the fungi contains chitin, which is a hard substance and also called as fungal cellulose. Now the fungi or the fungus exhibit the phenomenon of alteration of generation. So basically the alteration of generation is a phenomenon which commonly found in the bryophytes and also in pteridophytes. But the fungus exhibit this phenomenon and they produce a chemical called as pheromone, which is very essential for their reproduction. Fungal cells have nucleus and some organelles also, like cell wall, plasma membrane, which are found in all the plants and animal cells. They can be multicellular and sometimes they can be also single celled like yeast and many other examples. So now let's discuss about the classification of fungi. So there are different criteria or bases of classification for the fungus, and the first base is nutrition. So on the basis of mode of nutrition, the fungus can be differentiated into three types, which are saprophytic fungus, parasitic fungus and symbiotic fungus. So the saprophytic fungus are those fungus which obtain their nutrition by feeding on dead organic substances like rhizopus, penicillium and many other. The parasitic fungus include those fungus species which obtain their nutrition by living on other living organisms, but they absorb nutrient from their host and in response they cause different types of infections or diseases in these host cells like Tephrina and Puccinia, which causes several diseases in these plants. The third type of fungal species are symbiotic funguses. So these fungi living in a symbiotic association with several higher plants or some microbes. And in this condition, both the host cell and fungus get benefits from each other. The most common example of the symbiotic association of fungal cell and algal cell is called as lichens. And also another example of symbiotic fungi is mycorrhiza. So these are the fungal groups which are divided on the basis of the mode of nutrition. So now the another base for the differentiation of fungus or the classification for fungus is spore formation. So on the method of sexual reproduction, the fungal cell form different types of spores, and there are several species which form different types of spores, and on the basis of these spores they are differentiated into four major groups which are named as zygomycetes, ascomycetes, basidiomycetes and deuteromycetes. So the zygomycetes have the sexual spores known as zygospores, and the asexual spores are called as sporangiospores. In the case of ascomycetes, they are also called as sac fungi because they have sac-like structures in their structure, and they have the sexual spores named as ascospores, which are also called as asci. The basidiomycetes have the most commonly found edible fungi including mushrooms, and they also form like parasites and live as parasites. And the sexual spores found these fungi are basidiospores, and the asexual reproduction occur by the conidia, budding or fragmentation like agaricus and yeast. The fourth and the last type of fungus is deuteromycetes. They are called as imperfect fungi because they do not follow the regular reproduction cycle as the other fungus, and also they do not reproduce sexually. So they do not produce any type of spores, but the asexual reproduction method occur by the help of conidia. The example include trichoderma. So now let's understand about the structure of fungi with the help of this diagram. So here this is the diagrammatic presentation resembling the structure of multicellular fungi. So basically, except some yeast cells which are unicellular in nature and they are only single cells, most of the fungus are multicellular and are made up of thread-like filamentous, and these filamentous structures are named as hyphae. So the hyphae is a single unit for this structure, and there is a mass of hyphae which is considered as mycelium. So this hyphae is made up of either one or more than one cells which are surrounded by a tubular cell wall and divided by a cell wall, and this is called as septum. So the hyphae of most fungi are divided into cells by internal walls that are named as septa, and these septa have some little pores that have ribosomes, mitochondria and other cellular organelles. So basically, in those organisms or those fungi where the hyphae is divided into cells are called as septate hyphae, and where they do not have septae, they are considered as choanocytic hyphae. So here this is the structure of a septate hyphae or a multicellular filamentous fungus. So here we can see this is the septum or a septa, and it is the foot cells, and it is the filamentous structure having fruiting bodies. So we know that the fruiting bodies of asexual pores having conidiospores or named as conidia. So these are the conidia, and it is the vesicle of the fungi. Now let's understand about the mode of reproduction adopted by the fungal cell. So the fungus can reproduce by three methods, which include vegetative reproduction, asexual reproduction or sexual reproduction. The reproductive methods of vegetative reproduction include several methods like by budding, by fission, which are called as binary fission, and many other methods of fission, and also by fragmentation. The another method is called as asexual reproduction, and this takes place with the help of different types of spores, and these spores are commonly called as conidia or zoospores or sporangiospores, which are formed by different types of groups of fungi. The third mode of reproduction is by the help of sexual reproduction. So the sexual reproduction is the conventional mode, and it is not always observed in the kingdom fungi, but there are several fungi which adopt the method of sexual reproduction to reproduce themselves. In the sexual reproduction, they reproduce by the methods of specific types of spores produced by different types of fungi like ascospores, basidiospores and oospores, zygospores and many others. So these are the methods of reproduction of fungi. So now let's understand about the importance of fungi for the ecosystem as well as for humans and other plants and animals. So as we have discussed in our earlier video, that they play an important role in the nutrient cycle in ecosystem. So basically they are one of the most important groups of organisms on the earth, and they play a very important role in the biosphere, and also they have very important economic importance. They have both beneficial as well as several harmful effect also for humans as well as for other organisms in the planet. Now they have some economic importances in the food industry, in medicine industry, agricultural industry, and as well as in other industries also in human life. So in the food industry there are several fungal species which are very rich in proteins, like mushrooms. They are rich proteinous fungal species which are edible, and they are used as food source, and there are some yeast which are used in bakery. The fungal species are also used in the medicine industry to produce different antibiotics. So they are used to produce antibiotics like penicillin, which is an antibiotic and which is derived from a common fungi named as penicillium. Now there are some biocontrol agents which involve the fungal species to exploit insects and some other small worms and control pests and spores in the field of agriculture. And in the human life they are also important, and they also cause different types of harmful disease in humans as well as in plants. So they also have some harmful effects for the humans as well as for plants and other higher animals. So these are the importance and harmful effects which are played by fungal species.